All right, let's get into that interview now. We promised you. We obviously heard what the president had to say. Let's get to some responses now to what has been announced. We've got Lucky Ntimane joining us from the National Liquor Traders Council and Wendy Alberts from the Restaurant Association of South Africa. Good to have both of you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting us.
I detect smiles.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's a pleasure. I detect smiles, and they're not huge, but they're there. We're not used to you guys smiling when it comes to these kind of announcements. Usually this is the bad news. But let me start with you, Wendy. The Restaurant Association, you're happy with what was announced last night?
Absolutely. No, it was with great relief that we heard the president announce that the industry could trade without restrictions. It's been a very, very hard journey for us, as you well know. January's lockdown, December lockdown nearly killed the industry. And we were very, very nervous that there would be surprise announcements that came through. You know, on the logical side, there's absolutely no need for any further restrictions. The numbers are lower than they've ever been. And we need to be logical about the processes and moving forward. And most importantly, we need to continue in a collaborative manner with government to have conversations that actually bring the least economical impact to our industry and give us a leverage to rebuild the industry. So we're hoping that this is the start of good things to come for us. And we will continue to work with government in a way that really promotes the highest degree of health and safety for both our staff and the patrons who visit us over the Easter season.
Yeah, certainly. And also the hotel industry as well. I mean, that's a big relief. I think many were a little bit worried it would hamper some of the arrangements people have made. But Lucky, let's come to you. I mean, obviously the Easter weekend is a major contributor to liquor sales. So how does the offsite consumption ban, how does that affect you?
Look, the ban on the off-premise is really a big thing for us, especially in the retail space. We feel that maybe the president could have done more in that space. But I think, look, we need to really understand where the president is coming from, understand that he had to juggle some few balls and also maintain the issue of, saving lives and make sure that we minimize the resurgence of what could be the third wave if we're not careful. So we understand where it's coming from, and we're grateful that he was able to allow us to fully operate on an on-premise space. So for that, we are grateful, but we're saying that we fully understand where he made this decision coming from. So we are going to support and continue to support all government's efforts to ensure that we fight the COVID-19 pandemic together. For us, it is critical that we partner with government and all interested stakeholders to make sure that we really come together to defeat this monster that we're facing as a country.
Yeah. Wendy, according to a lot of reports, the restaurant industry will just not accept another hard lockdown. I don't know if accept is the right word, but survive could be an even better word to use. Talk to us about this. I mean, are there plans in place that if government does say we need to shut down, we need to do all of this, that the restaurant industry is going to rebel in a certain way?
Look, I think one of the key things that we've always advocated since the onset is that we're an eloquent industry. We are really here to have relationships that are one of integrity and have a degree of professionalism at all times. We are contributors to the GDP. We want to be heard. We certainly have called for all the vast amounts of evidence that they claim to have, as well as the expert advice that indicates that we are somewhat at risk in the transmission of COVID. What we've always been calling for since November last year was really to control the uncontrolled spaces. Those are the areas that really put everybody at risk. And it's irresponsible behavior that needs to be controlled by the authorities through times of festivities, through the Christmas season, and now obviously through this religious time being Easter. And we can't have the rogue behavior of some of the youth and some of other people in lockdown parties having an impact on beautiful businesses like ourselves who are operationally compliant, who do what we can do to obviously ensure safety and protocols and regulations are met within the industry, and to control the balances of those liquor licenses that don't allow for the safe dispensation of liquor through difficult times like we're having at this point in time.
Wendy, give us an idea. I mean, how many restaurants have closed down due to this past year that we've had?
Look, it's been devastating times, and I hate having this conversation because I know I stir up all type of emotion within patrons who have lost their favorite corner restaurant, their neighborhood local, as well as beautiful people who have lost their jobs within these establishments. So it is always a very difficult conversation to have. because I think that we could have done things differently and we could have learned faster from the mistakes we made early on in lockdown. But, we're all in a collaborative state, and there are discussions that take place vastly between different ministerial divisions that make these decisions. What I can say is we set out pre-lockdown around about 23,000 restaurants, and we are currently talking to a platform around about 11,000 restaurants. There are restaurants that have reopened and rebuilding themselves, but in that we've lost around about 500,000 jobs. And I think that one of the key things that we've always called for is a formal analysis of what our industry actually contributes to the GDP, the amount of jobs that we create, as well as the platform and landscape that we actually do bring into this country. We are iconic for world tourism. We have some of the most beautiful restaurants sited in some of the most beautiful venues around the world. And people come to South Africa as a destination to visit these beautiful high-end restaurants, fine dining restaurants, and restaurants that are really iconic to world-class cuisine. And many of those restaurants have been lost around South Africa and on the tourism belt.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work and there's a lot of rebuilding and remodeling that needs to be done. And our industry is also really vast. We talk about takeaways, we talk about sit-down restaurants, we talk about the bars, we talk about pubs, we talk about lounges, and then we obviously talk about the mom and pops, the coffee shops, the food trucks. There's such a variety of people that operate within our established sector. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of pain that's been felt over the last couple of months. And I think, when the noise happens and these conversations take place about third waves and lockdowns, you can just imagine the emotional complexity of our beautiful restaurateurs. To be able to run a business operationally takes a vast amount of contributions. It's not just about selling alcohol. We've got the composition of food, of budgeting, of making sure that we are ready for service over the weekend, of ordering in stock. There's a balance that goes through with cash flow, with staff, with being adequately prepared to be able to trade safely. So when these announcements hit us so instantly, our industry really, really takes an impact on many levels, operationally, financially, staff, and the viability of ourselves just to be able to trade in a pleasant, hospitable way really gets affected. So we are really grateful to the President for hearing our plea and allowing the industry to remain open through Easter.
So we heard about the restaurant industry. I mean, these numbers are massive, Wendy. They really are. I mean, when you talk about almost 500,000 job losses and the amount of restaurants that have closed down, and it's not about just the corner restaurant. It is about the lives that have been so badly affected. Lucky, the same is obviously on your side. When we talk to the liquor industry, do you think it will ever recover from those last 2 liquor bans that we've had?
It is going to be very difficult. If you look at the 19 weeks of non-trading that we had to endure since the first ban, almost 86.3 billion has been lost. The tavern sector is reeling from all these bans. In fact, we were worried that if the president was to have announced a ban, it would have been the end of the tavern sector as we know it. Taverns operate as sustenance type of businesses, meaning it's a hand-to-mouth. And we employ on average about 5 workers per tavern. So you're looking at the support to livelihoods of about 250,000 spread across the 34,500 taverns that we represent. We fear that almost 10% of our taverns were not able to operate pre the third ban. And that means that close to almost 20,000 jobs have been affected. It is going to take a bit of time for that recovery to take hold. But, we are confident that, if we are allowed to operate as we have been by the president, we are a resilient nation. We should be able to pick up the pieces and be able to be on our way to recovery. It's just a matter of time. We require support from government, from Minister of DTIC, as well as the Minister of Small Business to come to the party and support small businesses that operate as taverns, shopping permit holders in the township space. So far, we haven't received any single support or any cent from government since lockdown started. And we feel that it's about time that we're able to sit around the table with government and find ways in which we can support this type of business.
Yeah. To both of you, as we wrap up, just final closing words. I mean, we're talking to the fact that, Easter weekend, things are looking okay. The numbers are still okay. The third wave is not here. The numbers are really proving that we're managing to still hold our own. But the reality is that there is a huge possibility that we may go into a third wave and we may see more restrictions. Wendy, just if you could very quickly close it, and Lucky as well, do your industries have plans in place for this if this eventuality does happen?
Look, we're obviously here to remain compliant through the Easter holidays. We are calling on all patrons, and mostly we thank the patrons for supporting the industry. Without our beautiful patrons, we wouldn't have been able to rebuild the industry to the level that we are to remain open to trade through Easter. And we certainly are advocating that people do remain compliant. But the most important part is we want to talk to the uncontrolled spaces, those areas of people and the youth that feel that they don't have a responsibility towards the economical reprieve of the country and to rebuilding and to being a part of the beautiful country in the future. And if we don't all take responsibility of the behavior on the onset that comes from alcohol consumption, we could land ourselves up very nearly in another decimated space. We certainly are asking everybody to play their role and not to do anything that will bring irresponsible behavior to cause a negative impact on us as an industry.
Lucky, final word from you?
We really are calling on liquor traders to continue practicing safe public health protocols as it relates to COVID-19 and to make sure that our patrons are encouraged to observe all these regulations. Today, we are launching a partnership with Santaco. I know it's a taxi industry, but we felt the need to partner across different sectors to make sure that there is full COVID-19 compliance, where we have solicited support from liquor manufacturers in terms of PPEs and masks. We feel that these relationships and partnerships will go a long way in making sure that we as a country are able to come on the other side of COVID-19, being a nation that has conquered this pandemic.
Thank you to both of you, Lucky Ntimane from the National Liquor Traders Association or Council, and Wendy Alberts from the Restaurant Association, calling on South Africans to please abide by all of the regulations are in place so that we don't have to see hard lockdowns coming once again. All right, it's 7:30, news headlines.